So we are welcome to the class for the day. So we are continuing with the preprocessing methods description or some of the preprocessing activities that are very, very important in ensuring our data science and the machine learning modeling equations are well done, and also that it can to ensure that we can achieve the intended aim and objectives of such projects. So we started by looking at missing value treatment, which we took for almost 2 weeks. And then we can always check out the video in our YouTube channel, how to detect missing value and how to treat missing value. So today we are going to move into how do we detect outlier. So what is an outlier and how do we detect the outlier? So, and then also when we detect it, how do we treat the outlier? So this is part of our important clarification series. So towards achieving the principle of letting the data speak. So as usual, if you remember, this is the iterative process involved in machine learning modeling. So we can see it starting from the data. We have here, start from the data. So we are here presently trying to see what we can make of the data. So they are under data preparation. So we establish the fact that we should go ahead with our modeling once the data is ready for modeling. We shouldn't get involved in so many reprocessing activities because some of them are actually not necessary or not compulsory. And if you get into too much reprocessing at the beginning, you will lose the insight that you are supposed to get from the data set. So that is why we say that we carry out the basic, the most important, or near compulsory preprocessing, which we identify as the missing value treatment. Missing value, very, very important, because some machine learning algorithm will not work if there is presence of missing value. However, you can still use other algorithms like data, like decision tree, random forest, and all these decision tree families. With missing value, they can work, but an average algorithm will not work presence of missing value. For example, support vector machine will not allow you to run experiment if you have missing value. So it means we can almost say that missing value treatment is the most important of this pre-processing. However, for outlier, it can cause challenges, as we are going to see today. What is outlier? How can you treat it? But it's among the what I call the optional pre-processing techniques or stages. So once you are done the basic, then you go to modeling, check the performance of your model. You have that privilege to always go back as you wish. Go back to change the algorithm you are using, try different algorithms, make better algorithms, do ensemble, hybrid, check the performance. But sometimes you may have to go back, either to feature engineering, whereby you have to manipulate your feature. For example, you have a feature like a date. You want to break dates from a single value to multiple features, like separating the day, separating the month, and also separating the year. These are possibilities. And sometimes you might just have to go back and say, okay, can I do normalization for my data? Maybe normalization will ensure that I'm able to get better outcome, better results. However, if you go ahead and do normalization without letting the data speak, so the idea is, first of all, make sure that the actual data is used in your modeling before you proceed to deep reprocessing techniques like normalization. So we have had cases whereby normalized data perform less than the original data that has not been normalized. So that is how we have to use the principle of letting the data speak. Always use the original data or data that is as close to the original as possible so that we don't miss the important insight that we can detect in our data science applications. Now, so this is the principle we always show us this iterative process. You can always go back, but let the data speak. Run your experiment on the original data set, note down the result. Do you need improvement? Yes. Go back again, do normalization, go back again, do outlier detection, going back and find several other pre-processing techniques that may provide you with the needed better outcome in your modeling. However, to just rush into doing pre-processing, some people, once they get the data set, they go into pre-processing like missing value treatment, outlier treatment, normalization. You ended up actually working with fake data. So you are breaking the principle of letting the data speak. So let's see what insight can you get from the original data. It is when you are not getting what is satisfactory, then you move to other pre-processing activities like outlier detection, like normalization, and host of others that will be treating data. Now, let's move on that now to our outlier detection that is slated for today. In outlier detection, we are going to look into what is an outlier detection, what is an outlier, what is the impact of outlier on the data set, how do we detect it, and how to remove the outlier. So hopefully, we are going to see how far we can go. So when we say outlier, some people also call it anomalies. Outliers can also be referred to as anomalies, that something is not just going right in your data set. So imagine you have a data set of students who are supposed to be, let's say age. Yeah, you have age, or you are processing your student data. And then under the grade, you notice there are numbers, we have different values, 60, maybe 60 out of 70, 65, 66, maximum is in the exam maybe was 70. And suddenly you found 123. 123, something is not going right. Maybe somebody wanted to type 23, but mistakenly typed 1 before the 23. So we know that something is wrong with it. This is called an outlier. Something that is a number or a value that is totally out of place. So when we look at outlier, we can look at it from this point of view. And by the way, compared with missing value is far easier to detect. Detecting outlier has been compared to mining needle in a haystack. Much A and so little time. Look at this scenario. You see, you have little time because the fire is consuming this A, and then a needle, we know that there's a needle inside this A. You need to go in and quickly pick the needle, like this guy is trying to do. You can see. So that is how difficult it could be sometimes to be able to detect if this is an outlier and locate it. So after locating it, then you can then try to resolve the problem or treat the effect. So we say that we are droning, that's the reality of today. We are droning in greed of data that are being collected worldwide while starving for knowledge at the same time. That is, the data is still huge everywhere, but knowledge, because in the hierarchy of intelligence, we have data, we have information, and then we have knowledge. So data is just the raw score that is often meaningless. If you can contextualize your data, then it becomes information. For example, if I just put this value here without any information, 16, 65, 66, 123. It doesn't make any meaning until I tell you that this is the result of student in CSC 222. At that point, I'm changing that data from being a raw score to becoming information. Information. So, however, if I can put experience, previous knowledge, what is happening in the past, various data for this course for last year, for 3 years, for 5 years, can I put them side by side and be able to extrapolate, make prediction? What is happening with this data? What inferences can I make with this data? Then I'm turning that information to becoming knowledge. Knowledge. See? So we move from data to information, from information to knowledge. And then at the highest level of it, then we can make it even better by adding vision into it. Now, today we are faced with myriads of data, big data, but if we don't, the data will just be huge, but maybe useless. So once we are able to have this data set, we need to be able to say, okay, what can we do with the data? So we say anomalous events occur relatively frequently. Unlike meeting values, outliers are not very common, but they do happen. So, however, when they occur, the consequences can be quite dramatic, and they are often negative consequences. They come with negative consequences. Although they are not very common, but when they do occur, then the effects can be very, very dramatic. So we define outlier as a pattern in data that does not conform to the expected behavior. See, we call it anomaly or we call it outlier, it's the same thing. So the greatest of challenges there is trying to even locate it, unlike missing value that are easily located. If you want to visualize your data, you can see clearly that something is missing here. However, for outlier, the value is there. Then how do you know there's an outlier? Because it is within values. And what is an outlier in one feature is not an outlier in the other feature, making it more challenging to detect. We say an outlier is a commonly used terminology by analysts and data scientists as the need to close attention. That is, it needs close attention and it can result in widely wrong estimation. It can affect the entire modeling that you are trying to deal with. So we say that an outlier is an observation that appears far away and diverges from an overall pattern in the sample. For example, let's take for instance, this is can see this data. The entire data set they are all falling within their line of fit, except this guy that is here. This is an example of an outlier. So now the question we to ask ourselves is, how do we detect if there is outlier? And how extreme are they? And what are the effects that can happen? See, they are very challenging, like I said, compared to missing value. Outlier is much challenging because they are very difficult to detect. Take, for example, we have age. This is one feature one. Then we have score. The score of the student in one course. And then we have account balance. So here, you may have 10 million as a value, a valid value. However, score, the maximum score is usually 100. Age, as undergraduate, maybe we say maximum of also 100 years. And you can see here, values can range from maybe 20 to or 18 years to like 100, where here you have the huge range. So when you look at this column, if you get 10 million here, it is an outlier, underscore. Someone cannot call 10 million. However, here it is a normal number. It's a correct value. This is why outlier is very challenging to detect. Because what is an outlier in one feature is not an outlier in another feature. It means, unlike missing value, once you see missing value, you know that missing value is missing value, irrespective of the value or the values that the feature can, thereby making it very challenging to even, we're not talking of treatment. To detect is challenging for outlier. Once we're able to detect it, treating it becomes something very simple to handle. Here is another example of an outlier or outliers. You can see N1, their N2, their region of normal behavior, and the point 0, 1 and 0, 1 and O2, O1 and O2, they are anomalies. Even though this is forming a point, they are all anomalies, but they are far away from the normal system. This is the normal pattern. This is the normal pattern we are looking for. See? So outlier, if we add them together, put everything together, it may go a long way in affecting the modeling we want to carry out and the insight that we can get from our data set. We now look at the impact of outlier. The impact of outlier on the data set we are modeling. We said outliers can drastically change the result of the data analysis, and we are going to see an example shortly, and the statistical modeling we try to do. So there are several negative impacts that outliers do cause to our data analysis. One, it increases the error variance and reduce the power of accurate measure. So the normality of the data is also decreased. They often introduce bias, or they can influence the estimate that may be of substantial interest to the system we are modeling. And they can also impact the business analytics outcome that may arise finally at the end of our modeling. The basic assumption that we often have in regression, ANOVA, and other statistical models may be rendered invalid or useless by the presence of outliers. For example, let's look at these numbers, this data set together. This is a data set without an outlier. We find the mean, 5.45. We find the median. We find the mode, the most occurring one, the standard deviation. Now let's compare to data, the same set of similar data with an outlier. Just one single outlier, because the range is between 4 and 7. Now, this is an outlier. If we don't detect it and try to treat it, this is what it may portend or may bring to your system. Look at the mean. The mean has shifted from 5.45 to 30. Median, mode, these are now usually affected. But the mean and standard deviation, and these are the two most important statistical measures, statistical attribute that we often use to characterize our data. You can see how great the effect of outlier could be. Changing the mean, because the mean is now greater than super majority of the data set, with only 300 being above the mean. The mean is supposed to be the average of the data that should spread along the way. So this is a very, very clean data. If you have this kind of data, most likely you're going to have a very nice time doing your modeling because the data is very nice. The mean value, the median, the mode, they are all well distributed. within the same area. However, the moment you brought in this outlier, then it became a very big issue. So the impact of outlier is not something to toy with. It could have dramatic effect on the final outcome of our model. Now, then the challenge is, why is it difficult to detect outliers? Like I said, unlike missing value, just look at your data set, you can easily detect your missing value. Oh, something is missing here. You see, even when you detect missing outlier, because the normal behavior changes over time. That is, normal behavior changes over time. We pay attention to this. You have a data set this year, after a few years, what we consider an outlier today may become normal data next 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah. Maybe there's a change in the pattern of purchase. For example, this anomaly, we need this sometimes. So even when you have outlier, when you detect outlier, some may recommend that just leave it like that. Because that outlier is what we need to be able to identify what we are looking for. For example, in credit card fraud detection, when you want to model credit card fraud, the bad aspect of it is the outliers are the one that will be able to let us know that there is a crime that's about to be committed. Let's say somebody, usually the range of purchases for using his credit card is like between 2K, like a maximum of just two digit figure, maximum of maybe 99K. These are the range of purchase. So the data, we have huge data, all the data range within this level. However, we have new data set that comes in, and that data set now has like somebody is trying to withdraw like 300K using that credit card. If we're able to do proactive modeling for credit card fraud detection, we should be able to block this transaction before it happens. In the past, it happened, then we start to trace the person who carried out such transaction. No, we're moving towards what we call proactive modeling. That is, prevent problem from happening rather than letting it happen and you start looking for the one who carried out the crime. So in such a situation, when we have data set, 300K is an outlier, but we need that outlier to be modeled so that we'll be able to build a model that can identify outlier in future. In that sense, it's not in every data set that we remove outlier. Outlier may be what actually we are looking for in the system. Because you want to expose your data to both good and bad data pattern. In that case, it's not in all applications that we start removing outliers. Because outlier may be what we are looking for, depending on the kind of problem we are solving. So we said because of this, normal behavior in one time may become abnormal behavior after some years, even in some companies. In quality control, at the point in time, some quality control measures are very acceptable value. After a few years, we noticed that the quality control values need to change because the raw material qualities are changing. I'll give a quick example. In the past, wheat, the classical wheat used to be very long with low sugar content, very long with low sugar content. However, with time, after the hybridization, we want to increase the yield of wheat. We want to increase the yield of wheat. So we carry out some hybridization, genetic modification that made wheat become very short. Wheat used to be taller than an individual, very tall. But today you see a lot of wheat, the varieties, the new hybrids, they are very short so that they have the capability to carry huge weight. They want to increase the yield. However, the shocking challenge now is this wheat come up with high sugar content. High sugar content. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not aware of this part. When somebody suffers from sugar, diabetes, they say you should be eating whole wheat. Not knowing that if you are eating the new whole wheat, your sugar will be getting higher because the sugar content of it has increased compared to the original wheat that used to be tall. This is a very vital information that was detected not long ago. Medical doctors were shocked that really these are some of the things. So in the past, we need to know the normal wheat to have low sugar content. Why? Today, some of the majority of wheat outside, because we increase the yield, they are having high sugar content. It means outlier before the definition of outlier now we have to change. This is the characteristic of an outlier. And that is why it's very challenging to measure them with time. We say anomalies differ with domain. Yeah. If you have several features, weight, your weight, what is an anomaly? Anomaly in underweight. It's not an anomaly under the age. May not be an anomaly under the total earnings per year and also others. In the financial world, what is outlier is different from when you are talking of the amount of food you can, or how many times you should eat in a day. Maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4. The values are very low compared to the total amount of cash in your possession. We also say that noise tends to be like anomalies. Sometimes noise, which are noisy data collected, not like maybe the error due to parallax. You didn't take it very well. There are some errors that are responsible for that. They may look like an outlier, and they are not. So to determine how many outliers are there in the data is very challenging. And that was why at the beginning, I said that when you talk of outlier, then you should look at this, always remember this picture. It's like try to mine needle. You are looking for a needle in a haystack. Look at it, so much huge area. You are looking for, this guy is looking for this needle, and he needs to finish it before the fire gets to his own side. That is the comparison we have with outlier. It's usually very difficult to detect. Once you are able to successfully detect and identify the outlier, then you need to communicate with your client and then be able to let them know what you are saying. Sometimes the client also have their own idea that, well, this outlier, yeah, we have, thank you, but I think we still need to see what effect, because we get this value regularly. This kind of value may always come. So let your modeling take care of it so that it can be able to identify it in the future. So that is why when we deal with outlier, we are dealing with a very complicated issue sometimes. So therefore, to detect outlier is the big issue. Treating it is not an issue because we already discussed how to treat missing value. We are going to look into how to also treat outlier. So we use method of usually unsupervised method could be used for the detection. See, for example, like clustering, we try to say, okay, if we cluster the data, this is an example of clustering. You try to cluster your data into two. Let's say they told me that data set has like 2 clusters. The data belongs to people who are sick of heart attack or heart disease or not. So I may decide to cluster into 3 because I want to identify the outliers, the noisy data from that data. So what I do is I cluster the data into 8 or more for me. So I have the majority here. I have another majority here. This is clustering. This is another cluster. You can see this guy is here, another cluster. I will know that these are outliers. These are outliers because they are not staying with any of the normal classes. Usually, we can turn outlier, we can turn clustering to a pre-processing idea. We'll talk about clustering later on. we can turn clustering to become a pre-processing idea so that when you have your data set, the first thing is always let the data speak. Let us always remember this principle. Let the data speak. So in your original data, once you have the original data, run the experiment on your original data. Provided it can run, there's no missing value there, run it. Even when there's missing value, use decision tree and its family to run the experiment. See what you are getting. If you get your unique example, because we want your modeling to be based on as close as possible to the original data. To record the result of your modeling, then try to see, can I improve it? There is need for improvement. Then go back and treat your missing values. We've discussed missing value treatment. There are several methods of treating missing value, and no one can really tell you which of the methods are the best. There's no method that is always best in machine learning modeling. You have to check because data sets are always coming with different characteristics. That is why I always tell people, follow the principle of let the data speak. So run the experiment on your original data, put it down, then do missing value treatment, do outlier, run the experiment again, note it down. Oh, maybe there's outlier in there because we are not getting good result. Then check for outlier, try to remove your outlier, and then try to see what result you are getting. This is the principle of modeling that we must stick to and try always follow to avoid missing important information in the data section. So moving further, we have demonstrated the effect of missing outliers on the data. We said we've compared it to finding the needle in a haystack, which I show you the picture. That is how serious it could be to identify outlier. And the effect, you can see the huge effect it may have on your modeling, on your data. Just only one. If imagine you have 1 million, 10 million data set, how will you know there's 300 here? But the data is huge. You cannot be looking at it one by one. Then how do we treat it? How do we say that it is there? It's very important. So what are the methods that we can use to detect the presence of the outlier? We have the graphical method, we have the statistical based method, and we also have the distance based or model based method of detecting outlier. So this is just detection. We are not talking of treatment. Because like I said, once you are able to detect outlier, treating it becomes very simple, very, very easier. So because of our time, so I think it's going to be a good time to say to stop for the day. So we're going to start from what are the methods of detecting outliers, the graphical methods, the statistical based method, the based method, and then hopefully we're going to be ending it with method of treating outlier. The good news is methods of treating missing values, all the method you can use to treat missing value can be used to treat outlier at the same time. Therefore, the major challenge we have is how do we detect outlier? So this is what we're going to have for today. So we look forward to our next meeting where we are going to continue with how to detect outliers and then how to treat outliers. Thank you very much all for listening and for the attendance. Wish you all the best.